Don't die, Micah. Don't die. You promised you'd always be here. A 4-year-old girl is kneeling in blood. Not her blood, his. A 6-year-old boy, barefoot, 50 pounds, 3 broken ribs, is lying on the gravel behind a truck stop diner in Crestwood, Tennessee, with a bullet hole in his shoulder and his hands still locked around the little girl's wrist. He shoved her behind a propane tank. He turned and faced the gunman. He did not run. He is 6 years old, and he is dying. What the shooter does not know is that this little girl's father commands 670 men, and by morning, every single one of them is coming. If this story moves you, subscribe to the channel, follow it all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Rewind 3 hours. The boy's name is Micah Ward. Brown hair, green eyes, a stutter so bad he sometimes gave up on words entirely and just pointed at things like a dog begging for scraps. He was 6 years old, and he had been living behind Becker's Diner for 11 months. Not in the diner, behind it, between the dumpster and the propane cage, in a gap just wide enough for a small body to curl into when the rain came sideways off the Tennessee hills. Before the diner, there were foster homes. Before the foster homes, there was his mother. Rachel Ward had light brown hair and hands that smelled like cedar. She worked 2 jobs, morning shift at a laundromat, evening shift cleaning offices downtown, and she carved tiny wooden soldiers out of scrap wood with a pocket knife she kept in her apron. Every night she set one on Micah's windowsill and said the same thing. "That one's standing guard for you tonight. Nothing bad gets through while he's watching." She carved 47 of them, 47 nights of safety lined up like a tiny army on a boy's windowsill. Then the cancer came, and it came fast, and it did not care about wooden soldiers or pocket knives or a woman who worked 2 jobs and still found time to tuck her son in every single night. She died holding Micah's hand. He was 4. The hospital room smelled like bleach and plastic flowers, and something underneath both of those smells that Micah would later understand was death, but at 4 just understood as wrong. Her hand got cold. She stopped talking. A nurse came in and tried to pull him away, and he screamed until something in his throat tore, and his voice went to gravel, and the nurse finally let go and just stood there, crying herself, watching a 4-year-old boy hold his dead mother's hand because nobody had the heart to break the grip. After that, the system swallowed him whole. First home, the Marshalls. Good people. Warm food, warm house. Mr. Marshall with his crossword puzzles, and Mrs. Marshall with her oatmeal cookies that crumbled the second you picked them up. 2 months. Then Mr. Marshall had a stroke in the kitchen. Dropped like a tree. Mrs. Marshall rode with him to the hospital, and Micah sat on the porch with a social worker he had never met and watched the ambulance lights disappear down the street. He did not cry. He had already learned that crying did not change anything. Second home. A woman named Brenda who ran a daycare out of her living room and treated foster kids like Foster that could do chores. Micah washed dishes, folded laundry, swept floors. He was 4 years old, and he was standing on a step stool to reach the kitchen sink. Brenda never hit him. She never touched him at all. She looked through him like he was made of glass. 6 months of being invisible in a house full of screaming toddlers. Then Brenda decided she did not want foster kids anymore. Micah was moved again. Third home, Glenn. Glenn drank whiskey from a coffee mug and called it medicine. He was a big man with small eyes and a voice that stayed quiet right up until it didn't. The first time Glenn hit Micah, it was Tuesday. Micah spilled apple juice on the kitchen table. Open hand across the face. The sound was louder than the pain. Micah hit the floor and looked up, and Glenn was already wiping down the table like nothing had happened. "Clean yourself up," Glenn said, "and stop crying. Men don't cry." Micah was 4 years old. The second time was worse. Closed fist. Micah had been crying in his sleep, A nightmare about his mother's hand going cold, and the sound woke Glenn up. Glenn came into the room and hit him so hard Micah's vision went white. "I said stop crying. What did I say?" "Stop crying." "Then stop." The third time Glenn used a phone cord. Micah does not talk about the third time. What matters is what happened after. March, freezing, 2 in the morning. Micah climbed out the window in bare feet, wearing a t-shirt and pajama pants, clutching the last wooden soldier his mother had carved, the only one he had managed to keep through 3 homes. He had hidden it inside a sock, inside a shoe, inside a box under his bed, because he had learned that anything adults could see, adults could take. He ran. No direction, no plan, just away. Away from Glenn's coffee mug, and Glenn's fists, and Glenn's flat voice saying, "Men don't cry," to a child who had every reason in the world to cry. He was 5 years old. The streets of Crestwood taught him everything school never would. He learned which dumpsters behind which restaurants had food on which nights. He learned that the garbage run at Becker's Diner on Thursdays always included half-eaten plates wrapped in foil, because the cook, a big man named Daryl, wrapped them on purpose and set them where a small boy could reach. Daryl never said a word about it, never made eye contact, never called the cops or CPS or anyone else. He just left the food and looked the other way. And that single act of silent mercy was the closest thing to love Micah had known in 11 months. Micah learned the rhythms of the town the way animals learn the rhythms of the forest. He knew the sheriff's deputy who parked behind the gas station and slept from midnight to 4. He knew which teenagers sold pills near the railroad bridge and which ones would chase you if you got too close. He knew the married woman at the hardware store who met a man who was not her husband every Wednesday at the motel on Route 12. Nobody told Micah any of this. When you are furniture, people forget to whisper. When you are invisible, the whole world performs in front of you like you are not even there. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant nobody called CPS. Invisible meant nobody dragged you back to a Glen. Micah held on to invisible the way other kids held on to blankets. Then Sadie Holt showed up and blew his whole system apart. 6 weeks before the shooting, late afternoon, Micah was behind the dumpster sorting bottle caps into a tin can. This was his collection, his treasure. Red caps on the left, silver on the right, gold in the middle. The gold ones were rare. He had 11. Each one felt like a victory. The back door of the diner banged open. A little girl walked out, 4 years old, blonde curls, a gap between her front teeth wide enough to whistle through, a Band-Aid on her chin with little strawberries on it. She walked straight up to Micah like he was a normal kid doing a normal thing in a normal place, and she said, "What are those?" Micah stared at her. Nobody asked him questions. Nobody looked at what he was doing and felt curiosity instead of pity or disgust. His stutter locked his jaw before he could even try to answer. Bottle caps. He waited for the look, the flinch, the slow backing away that people did when they heard the stutter, like it was contagious, like broken speech meant a broken brain. Sadie sat down in the dirt next to him, cross-legged, chin in her hands. "Can I help you sort them?" That was it. That was the whole thing. 7 words from a 4-year-old girl, and the invisible boy became visible to one person on the entire planet. One person was enough. One person was everything. "The red ones go there," Micah said, pointing. "I know red," Sadie said, like he had insulted her intelligence. "I'm 4, not a baby." Something happened in Micah's chest that he did not have a word for. It was warm, and it hurt, and it scared him because every time he had felt it before, with his mother, with the Marshalls, someone had taken it away. Warmth was a trap. Warmth was the bait on the hook. He knew that, but he let her sort the bottle caps anyway. Over the next 6 weeks, Sadie came to the back of the diner every afternoon while her mother, Karen Holt, worked the evening shift inside. Karen was a waitress, tough, tired, the kind of woman who smiled at customers and meant it, even when her feet were killing her and her tips were lousy. She was raising Sadie mostly alone because her husband was on the road more than he was home. Micah did not know anything about Sadie's father. He did not know that Derek Holt was the president of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, Southeast Chapter. 670 members across 9 states. He did not know that the man's name made people go quiet in certain rooms. He did not know that the rumble of 600 Harleys could shake the ground like a slow earthquake. He just knew Sadie. And Sadie was relentless. She brought him things: a granola bar, a juice box, a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands under a purple rainbow with the words Micah and Sadie, best friends, written in handwriting so crooked it looked like the letters were falling off a cliff. She misspelled friends, and Micah did not correct her because it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given him. "That's you," she said, pointing at the taller stick figure. "And that's me. And that's the sun. I made the sun happy because it's a happy picture." The sun has teeth," Micah said. "It's smiling, Micah. Suns smile. Suns don't have teeth. Mine does." She talked to him like he was normal. That was the thing. She did not slow down her words or finish his sentences, or look at him with that soft, tilted head pity that adults use like a shield. She waited through his stutter. Sometimes she waited a long time. She never once said, "Take your time," or "It's okay," or any of those things people said that actually meant, "Hurry up, you're making me uncomfortable." She just waited, and when the words finally came, she responded to them like they had arrived right on time. She told him about General Buttons, her stuffed rabbit who was actually a general in the rabbit army, and he's won like 100 battles, but he's also very soft. She told him about her goldfish named Pizza, because he's orange like pizza cheese. She told him about her daddy's motorcycle. "It's so loud, Micah, like the birds fly away when he starts it, and he lets me sit on it, but only when it's not running, because Mama says I'll vibrate right off." Your dad rides a motorcycle?" "He rides the biggest one, and all his friends ride too. They're like a whole parade, but louder." Micah filed this information away the way he filed everything, quietly, completely, in a place where it might matter later. One afternoon, 4 weeks in, Sadie was sitting beside him behind the dumpster, eating a peanut butter sandwich and getting more of it on her face than in her mouth, when Micah reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden soldier. The last one, the one his mother carved. Worn smooth from 2 years of a boy's hands pressing it against his chest every night like a prayer. He held it out. Sadie's eyes went wide. What is this?" she asked. And Micah almost laughed because she sounded just like him. "A soldier. My mom made it. He guards you at night. Nothing bad gets through while he's watching." Sadie took it, turned it over in her small hands, studied the rough carved face, the tiny arms, the base that was flat enough to stand on a windowsill. "I'm going to keep him forever," she said. You don't have to." "Forever, Micah. That means forever." She shoved it into her pocket with the same certainty she did everything. Absolute, unquestioning, like the universe would simply have to rearrange itself around her decisions. And Micah's chest did that thing again. That warm, terrible, beautiful ache. The one that meant he was in trouble. The one that meant he had something to lose. But warmth was not the only thing building behind that dumpster. Something else was growing too. Something dark. Something Micah had been tracking for over a week with the same patient, desperate attention he gave to everything. A black SUV. Tinted windows. No plates. First time he saw it, Monday early afternoon. It rolled past the diner slow, paused at the intersection, then turned left toward the elementary school. Micah watched it go and felt nothing specific, just a tick in the back of his brain, a small alarm. Second time, Tuesday, same SUV, same route. But this time it slowed down in front of the playground on Birch Street. Slowed down, not stopped. Just enough to look. Then it sped up and was gone. Third time, Wednesday. The SUV parked across from the church where the after-school program let kids out at 5:30. It sat there for 12 minutes. Micah counted. The engine was running. Nobody got out. Then the kids came through the doors and the SUV pulled away. Not fast, not slow, just smooth, like a predator that was not hungry yet, but was memorizing where the prey gathered. By Thursday, Micah had the route memorized. Diner, school, playground, church, always between 3 and 5:30 in the afternoon. Always slowing near groups of children. Always speeding up when an adult walked close. Micah knew what hunting looked like. He had seen it in Glenn's eyes before the first hit. That patience, that calculation, the way a predator goes still before it strikes, measuring distance, measuring risk, measuring whether the prey will run or freeze. This SUV was hunting, and it was hunting children. He wanted to tell someone. He tried. He walked into the diner one afternoon and stood near the register until a waitress looked down at him. She had pink nails and tired eyes. "Hey, sweetie, you need something?" There's a car, a black one. It keeps... Honey, I can't understand you. Slow down. A black SUV. No P-plates. It watches. Sure, sweetheart. She was already turning away. A customer was waving a menu. "I'm sure it's fine. Go on now." He tried the gas station attendant. Same result. He tried the old man who sat on the bench outside the post office every afternoon feeding pigeons. The man listened longer than anyone else, then patted Micah on the head and said, "You got a big imagination, son. Don't worry so much." Don't worry. The two words adults use when they meant, "I don't want to deal with this." Micah stopped trying to tell people. He started watching harder. He noted the times, the routes, the way the SUV never came on weekends, only weekdays when children were at school or in programs. He noticed a second vehicle one Tuesday, a white van parked near the elementary school during pickup. Different plates, but the same dent on the rear bumper he had spotted the week before when the plates were different. They were switching plates. That meant organization. That meant planning. That meant this was bigger than one car and one person. Micah did not know the word for what he was seeing. He did not know about networks or trafficking or shell corporations. He just knew that something bad was circling the children of Crestwood like a slow, patient shark. And nobody was paying attention except a 6-year-old homeless boy with a stutter who people could not be bothered to listen to. So he did the only thing he could do. He kept Sadie close. "Sadie, don't go past the parking lot." "Why?" "Just don't. You're being weird again. Promise me." She looked at him, really looked. Whatever she saw in his eyes, the fear, the urgency, the absolute seriousness, it reached her. "Okay, I promise." Thursday evening, the sun was bleeding out behind the tree line, painting the sky the color of a bruise. Micah was behind the dumpster, waiting. Sadie always came to say goodnight before Karen's shift ended. That was their routine. That was the one sacred, untouchable rhythm in Micah's life. The back door opened. Sadie, alone, holding something behind her back, grinning so wide the gap in her teeth could have fit a marble. "I brought you something." She pulled out a paper bag. Inside, a grilled cheese sandwich, cut into triangles, still warm. The cheese was melting through the bread, and the smell hit Micah so hard his knees almost buckled. "Daryl made it special," Sadie said. "He said it's for the kid out back. He knows about you, Micah. He's nice." Micah's stomach twisted, hunger and fear at the same time. Being known was dangerous. Being known meant someone could make a phone call. Being known meant CPS. Being known meant another Glenn. "Sadie, go back inside." "Why?" I just got here. Eat your sandwich. Go back. Then he heard it. An engine. Low. Close. Wrong. Not the rumble of a truck passing on the highway. Not a customer pulling into the lot. This was a purr. Controlled. Deliberate. The sound of a vehicle that was not passing through but arriving. The black SUV turned into the parking lot. Not circling this time. Not watching. Stopping. 20 feet from the dumpster. The headlights cut off. The engine stayed running. Micah's blood went cold. Every survival instinct he had built over 11 months of sleeping with one eye open fired at once. His vision sharpened. His hearing amplified. The stutter vanished. Terror burned it clean out of his throat like fire through dry brush. Sadie, inside, now. She heard it in his voice. The command, the absolute zero-tolerance authority that a 6-year-old boy should never have to summon, but that Micah summoned now because he had spent 11 months learning the difference between safety and danger. And this was danger. This was the worst danger he had ever felt. He grabbed her hand and ran. 40 feet to the back door. The SUV doors opened. Both sides. 2 men. Ski masks. Gloves. Moving fast. Not running. Professionals don't run. But covering ground with a purpose that said they had done this before, and they knew exactly how long it took. One of them was carrying zip ties. The other had a gun tucked into his waistband. Micah screamed. Full voice. No stutter. No hesitation. A scream that came from somewhere deeper than his throat, from his mother's cold hand, from Glenn's fists, from 11 months of dumpsters and cold rain, and every single adult who had ever failed him. Help! Somebody help! The first man reached them 15 feet from the door. A hand closed around Micah's arm and yanked him off his feet. He hit the ground. Gravel tore into his palms. Pain shot through his knees. But the pain was nothing. The pain was background noise, because the man's other hand was reaching for Sadie. Grab the girl, the first man said to the second. Flat voice, no emotion, like he was picking up a package. Micah threw himself at the second man's legs, both arms, full body, wrapped around the man's ankle like a chain. The man stumbled, cursed, kicked. A boot connected with Micah's ribs. Something cracked. A sound like a stick breaking. Another kick. Another crack. Pain erupted through his side so intense, his vision went gray at the edges. He did not let go. Sadie was screaming, "Mama! Mama! Mama!" She picked up a rock from the gravel, a good-sized rock, the kind that fits a 4-year-old's hand like it was made for it, and she threw it. Hard, direct. It hit the first man in the mouth. Blood sprayed through the ski mask. Little, the man spat blood, lunged for her. The second man, the one Micah was wrapped around, pulled the gun. He pointed it down at Micah. A grown man pointing a gun at a 6-year-old boy lying in the gravel with broken ribs and bleeding hands. "Let go or I shoot you, kid. I'm not playing." Micah looked up. Green eyes, blood on his face, gravel embedded in his palms. He was 6 years old, and he was looking at death, and he did not let go. He shoved Sadie toward the door with his last ounce of strength, both hands, everything he had left. "Run!" The gun went off. The bullet tore through Micah's left shoulder, and the sound split the evening air so loud it sent birds exploding out of every tree in the parking lot. Micah's body jerked sideways. Blood erupted from the wound. Not a trickle, not a slow bleed, but a spray that soaked his shirt in 2 seconds flat and hit the gravel beneath him like warm rain. His vision went white, then red, then nothing at all except pain so total it replaced every other sensation in his body. He could not hear. He could not see. His lungs locked. His legs gave out. But his hand, his left hand, the one connected to the shoulder that had just been destroyed, was still locked around Sadie's wrist, still pushing her away, still shoving her toward the back door of the diner, with the last signal his brain could send before the shock swallowed everything. Sadie fell backward, hit the ground, scrambled up. She did not run. A 4-year-old girl covered in a 6-year-old boy's blood, and she did not run. She grabbed Micah's shirt with both hands and pulled. "Get up, Micah! Get up!" The back door of the diner exploded open. Daryl came through it like a freight train, 260 pounds, a cast iron skillet in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, apron still on, grease still on his arms, and a look on his face that said he had been waiting his whole life to do something that mattered, and this was it. Behind him, Karen Holt, who had heard her daughter scream through the kitchen window and grab the baseball bat she kept behind the register for exactly this kind of night. The first man saw Daryl and hesitated. 1 second. That was all it took. Daryl swung the skillet. It connected with the man's forearm. The crack was audible. The man howled, dropped to one knee. Karen was already past him, bat raised, standing over her daughter like something feral and ancient, and absolutely willing to kill. "Sadie, baby, are you hurt?" "Mama, Micah got shot. He's bleeding, Mama." The second man, the shooter, looked at Daryl, looked at Karen, looked at the faces appearing in the diner windows, the phones coming out, the sound of someone inside already screaming into a 911 call. He calculated. 2 seconds of cold math behind a ski mask. Then he grabbed the first man by the collar, and they ran. The SUV doors slammed. Tires screamed on gravel. Gone. Karen dropped to her knees. Micah was on his back, eyes glassy, mouth open, blood pooling beneath him in a circle that kept getting wider. His shoulder was wrong. The bone was visible through the tear in his shirt, and the skin around the wound was already turning a color that skin should never turn. "Oh God, oh God, oh God!" Karen ripped her apron off and pressed it against the wound. Blood soaked through in seconds. She pressed harder. Micah did not react. He was staring at the sky with eyes that were somewhere else entirely. Sadie was kneeling in his blood, both hands pressed against his shoulder alongside her mother's, her small fingers disappearing into the red. "Don't die, Micah. Don't die. You promised. You promised you'd always be here." "Sadie, baby, let Mama." "I'm not letting go. He didn't let go of me, and I'm not letting go of him." Daryl was on his knees too, big hands shaking. He pulled off his apron and doubled it over Karen's. "Keep pressure, don't stop. Where's the ambulance?" "Someone called, I don't know. I don't know how long." "He's losing too much blood, Karen." I know, just keep." Micah's eyes fluttered, his lips moved. No sound. Then barely a whisper, broken and wet. "Sadie? I'm here. Micah, I'm right here. Open your eyes." Did they get you?" "No, you pushed me. You pushed me away and they didn't get me." Something moved across his face. Not a smile, something deeper. Relief. The kind of relief that allows a body to finally stop fighting. His eyes closed. "Micah! No, no, no! Micah, open your eyes!" Karen grabbed her phone. Her hands were so covered in blood that it took 3 tries to unlock the screen. She left red fingerprints on everything. She hit Derek's number. 1 ring, 2 rings. She was shaking so hard the phone almost slipped out of her hand. "Hey, babe." Someone tried to take Sadie. Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that is so full of rage it has weight, density, gravity. 1 second, 2, 3. Karen could hear him breathing. Slow, controlled. The breathing of a man who had spent 20 years leading 670 men and had learned that the first 30 seconds after a crisis determined everything. Where? Becker's Diner. The back lot. "Derek," her voice cracked. "There's a boy, a homeless boy. He's been living behind the diner and Derek, he stepped in front of them. He shoved Sadie behind the propane tank and they shot him. He's 6 years old. He's 6, and he's bleeding out on the pavement, and the ambulance isn't here yet, and I can't make it stop. Is Sadie hurt? No, because of him. Because a 6-year-old boy who weighs 50 pounds stood between two grown men and our daughter and took a bullet for her. Derek's voice dropped. Not louder, quieter, the dangerous quiet. I'm coming. Don't move. Don't let anyone move that boy. He hung up. Derek Holt was standing in the main hall of the Iron Saints clubhouse in Ridgemont, Tennessee, 120 miles south of Crestwood. 212 men in the room, some eating, some playing pool, some working on bikes in the adjacent garage. A Thursday night like any other Thursday night, until Derek stood on a chair. The room went silent, not gradually, instantly. When Derek stood on furniture, it meant something had gone sideways. And when something went sideways for Derek Holt, it went sideways for every man in the room. His face was stone. His jaw was locked. His eyes were the kind of calm that men who had known him for 20 years recognized as the most dangerous version of him that existed. Someone tried to take my daughter. The room didn't breathe. Two men in a black SUV, ski masks, zip ties, professional. They came for Sadie in the parking lot behind Becker's Diner in Crestwood. A man in the back, Tank, 6'4", 300 pounds, braided beard, stood up so hard his chair hit the wall. Is she? She's alive. She's not hurt. Because a 6-year-old homeless kid who's been sleeping behind the diner threw himself between the shooters and my little girl. Derek paused. His voice did not waver. They shot him. He's 6, and he's dying on the pavement right now because he did what none of us were there to do. The silence changed. It went from shock to something else. Something with heat. Something with teeth. I'm riding now. Anyone who wants to come, come. Anyone who doesn't, no judgment. He stepped off the chair. But I'm not stopping until I get there. Every man in the room stood. Every single one. 212 men reaching for keys, for vests, for phones. Briggs, Derek's VP, a lean man with a shaved head and a scar running from his left ear to his jaw, was already dialing. I'll call every chapter. Do it. How many you want? All of them. Briggs started making calls before his boots hit the parking lot. Atlanta, Nashville, Charlotte, Birmingham, Jacksonville, Memphis, Louisville, Knoxville. The same message, stripped to bone. Holt's daughter. A kid got shot. We ride. Now. Derek's Harley fired up, and the sound was a cannon shot in the night air. He pulled out of the lot and hit the highway, and behind him, 40 bikes roared to life and followed. By the county line, 90. By the time he passed the first mile marker on the interstate, phones in 9 states were ringing, and men were walking away from dinner tables, from bars, from beds, from television sets, from their children's homework, pulling on boots and leather and heading for their bikes. A man in Charlotte kissed his wife and said, "Holt's kid, I gotta go." She didn't ask questions. She handed him his vest. A man in Jacksonville put down a wrench, wiped his hands on a rag, told his shop partner to close up. "How long you gonna be?" the partner asked. "Long as it takes." A man in Memphis was at his mother's house for dinner. He stood up in the middle of dessert. "Ma, I got a ride." His mother, 74 years old, veteran's wife, looked at his face and said, "Go, I'll wrap up your pie." They came from garages and kitchens and night shifts and parking lots. They came from small towns and cities and farms and suburbs. They came because the call went out. And the call was simple, and the call was sacred. A child was hurt, a brother's daughter was in danger, and the Iron Saints did not let that stand. Derek did not remember the ride. Later, people would ask him about it. 120 miles in under 90 minutes. He would shake his head and say he didn't remember anything except the wind and the engine, and the worst sentence he had ever heard playing on a loop in his skull. Someone tried to take Sadie. A 6-year-old boy took a bullet for her. He's bleeding out on the pavement. Derek's hands were steady on the handlebars. His eyes were dry. His breathing was controlled. Everything inside him was a wildfire, but nothing on the surface moved. That was how he led. Not with rage, with precision. Rage was a flood. It destroyed everything, including the things you needed. Precision was a blade. And Derek was going to need a blade before this was over. He pulled into the hospital parking lot in Crestwood at 9:47 p.m. There were already bikes there, the advance riders, the closest chapters, the ones who had less distance to cover. Derek didn't count them. He didn't look at them. He threw his leg over the bike and walked through the emergency room doors, and the nurses at the station took one look at him. Leather, road dust, a face that could have been carved from the side of a mountain. And someone said, "Sir, you can't. My daughter's here, Sadie Holt. Where?" A nurse pointed. Derek walked. His boots echoed in the hallway. He turned the corner and Sadie was sitting on a plastic chair with Karen's jacket around her shoulders and blood, Micah's blood, still on her hands and her shirt and her face. She saw him and her whole body came apart. "Daddy!" She launched off the chair and hit him at full speed. He caught her, lifted her, held her so tight his arms shook. His face pressed into her hair, and for 3 seconds, just 3, Derek Holt was not the president of the Iron Saints. He was a father holding his daughter and shaking so hard he had to lock his knees to stay standing. "Are you hurt? Sadie, look at me. Are you hurt anywhere?" "No, Daddy. Micah pushed me. He pushed me and the man shot him, and there was so much blood, and he still didn't let go of my hand, Daddy. He still didn't let go." "I know, baby. I know. You have to help him. Daddy, please. He doesn't have anybody. He lives behind the dumpster and nobody takes care of him. And he gave me his soldier, the one his mama made. And you have to help him. Promise me." Derek looked at Karen over Sadie's head. Karen's eyes were swollen. Her hands were still stained red. She shook her head slowly. Not no, but you need to see this for yourself. "Where is he?" "ICU, 3rd floor. Derek," Karen grabbed his arm. "He's 6, and the things they found on that boy." She stopped, swallowed. "Just go see him." Derek took the elevator alone. The hallway on the 3rd floor was quiet in that terrible way that hospital hallways are quiet when the people behind the doors are fighting to stay alive. A nurse walked him to the room. She paused outside. "Mr. Holt, I need to prepare you. The bullet shattered his clavicle and nicked the subclavian artery. He lost almost 40% of his blood volume. He's in critical condition. He's stable for now, but the next 12 hours will tell us everything. Okay? There's something else," she hesitated. "When we undressed him for surgery, we found old injuries. Healed fractures in 2 ribs on the right side. Scars on his back consistent with being struck with a thin object, a cord or a belt. Cigarette burns on his left forearm. These injuries are months to years old. They have nothing to do with tonight." Derek didn't speak. His jaw worked. Something behind his eyes shifted. A door opening to a room that was already on fire. "He's a foster child? We're not sure what he is. He had no ID, no records, nothing. A cook from the diner said the boy's been living behind the building for nearly a year." Derek walked into the room. Micah was small. That was the first thing. He was so small in that hospital bed that the blankets barely had a shape. Tubes in his arms, wires on his chest. A machine breathing for him in slow, mechanical rhythms. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages that were already showing spots of red. His face was pale. His lips were gray. Bruises, old ones, yellow and green and faded purple, ran up both arms and across his back where the hospital gown didn't cover. Derek sat down in the plastic chair beside the bed. He looked at the boy for a long time. He looked at the bruises that had nothing to do with tonight. He looked at the hands, small, scraped raw from gravel, nails bitten down to nothing. He looked at the ribs he knew were fractured beneath the bandages. He looked at the burns the nurse had told him about. And then he looked at the face. Thin, sharp, older than 6. The face of a boy who had been carrying things no child should carry and had been carrying them alone. Derek took Micah's hand, carefully. The IV line was fragile and the boy's fingers were cold, and Derek's hands were big enough to wrap around that small fist twice over. "I don't know if you can hear me, kid." His voice was low, rough. "But I'm Sadie's dad, and you saved my little girl tonight. You're 6 years old and you did what grown men wouldn't do. You stood in front of a gun for a 4-year-old girl who sorts bottle caps with you behind a dumpster." The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. Micah did not move. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to wake up, and when you do, you're not going to be alone anymore. I'm going to be sitting right here. I haven't moved and I'm not going to move. You have my word on that. And I have never broken my word, not once in 20 years. He squeezed the boy's hand, gently. "You hear me, Micah? I'm not going anywhere. Fight." Derek sat back. He did not leave the chair. He did not eat. He did not sleep. When Karen brought him coffee, he drank it without tasting it. When Briggs called for an update, Derek answered in 3 words. "He's still fighting." When a nurse came in at midnight to check vitals and saw Derek still sitting there, still holding the boy's hand, she started to say visiting hours were over, and then she looked at his face and decided that some rules were not worth enforcing tonight. Outside, the parking lot was filling. The sound started around 10 p.m., a low rumble in the distance like an approaching storm. Then headlights, then the roar. They came in groups, 20s and 30s and 40s. They parked in rows. They filled the hospital lot and spilled onto the street, and then onto the next street, and then into the lot of the grocery store across the road. The ground shook. Not a figure of speech. The actual ground vibrated beneath the hospital so consistently that a nurse on the second floor thought it was construction until she looked out the window. By midnight, 400 motorcycles. By 2 a.m., 560. By dawn, 670. 670 men from 9 states. Men who had left beds, jobs, families, meals. Men who rode through the night on highways and back roads and interstates because a phone call told them a brother's daughter was targeted and a child was shot, and the Iron Saints were gathering. They stood in the parking lot. They sat on their bikes. They leaned against trucks and smoked and drank coffee from gas station cups and spoke in low voices. Some of them had never met Derek. Some of them had never been to Crestwood. All of them were there. A reporter from the local news station pulled into the lot at 5 a.m. and saw the sea of motorcycles and leather and iron crosses, and called her producer and said, "You're going to want to send a camera crew. I can't explain what I'm looking at." Inside room 312, Derek Holt was still in the chair, still holding the boy's hand. The wooden soldier, the one Micah had given to Sadie, the one his mother had carved, was sitting on the pillow next to Micah's head. Sadie had placed it there at midnight. She had walked into the ICU, climbed onto the bed, tucked the soldier against the pillow and whispered, "He's standing guard for you, Micah. Nothing bad gets through while he's watching." Then she kissed Micah's forehead and climbed down and walked back to her mother and did not cry until she was in Karen's arms and her face was hidden and nobody could see. 670 engines idled in the parking lot as the sun came up over Crestwood, Tennessee. The sound carried for miles. People opened their doors and stood on their porches and stared. The vibration could be felt in the floors of every building within 3 blocks. And inside room 312, a 6-year-old boy with a shattered collarbone, an old cigarette burns, and a wooden soldier on his pillow fought for his life, while a man who did not know him held his hand and refused to let go. 31 hours after surgery, Micah opened his eyes. Not all at once. Not like in the movies where someone gasps awake and sits up. It was slow. A flutter of eyelids. A twitch in his fingers. A sound, low, broken, barely human, that came from somewhere deep in his chest, like his body was trying to remember how to work. The machines caught it first. The heart rate monitor ticked up. The oxygen sensor shifted. A nurse looked at her screen and stood. "He's waking up." Derek was in the chair. 31 hours, same chair, same position. His back was wrecked. His legs were numb. His eyes were bloodshot, and his jaw was dark with stubble. And there were 2 untouched sandwiches on the table beside him that Karen had brought and he had ignored. He leaned forward. "Micah, hey, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes opened. Green, glassy, confused. They moved across the ceiling, the tubes, the wires, the machines. Then they found Derek, a huge man in leather, tattoos up both arms, dark eyes, filling the room with his shoulders. Micah's whole body went rigid. Fear, raw, animal, instantaneous. His hands clenched. His legs drew up. He tried to bolt. The IV line caught and pain ripped through his shoulder, and he cried out and fell back, and his eyes were wild now, trapped, scanning for an exit. "Easy, easy, kid. I'm not going to hurt you." Derek held up both hands, open palms, voice low, slow. "The way you talk to something wounded. I'm Sadie's dad." Micah stopped. His breathing was ragged, his chest was heaving, but the name cut through the panic like a blade. "Sadie? She's fine. She's right outside. She's been driving the nurses crazy for 2 days waiting for you to wake up." She's not hurt?" "Not a scratch, because of you." Micah's eyes searched Derek's face, testing, measuring, looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden agenda that every adult in his life had eventually revealed. Derek held still. Let the boy look. Let him take whatever time he needed. The door burst open. Sadie came through it like a comet. She was past Derek, past the nurse, up on the bed rail in 2 seconds flat. She grabbed Micah's hand, the one without the IV, and held it with both of hers. "Micah, you're awake! Oh my gosh, you're awake!" "I put General Buttons right there, see? And your soldier is right there on the pillow. I put it there myself because I told him to guard you. And I think it worked because you woke up and... Sadie. And I told every single person in this hospital that you're the bravest person in the whole entire world. And the nurse with the pink shoes said I needed to use my inside voice. But this is my inside voice, and... Sadie." Derek put a hand on her shoulder, gentle. "Let him breathe." "I'm letting him breathe. I'm just also talking. I can do both." Something happened on Micah's face. It was small. It was fast. But Derek caught it. The corner of the boy's mouth twitched. Not a smile, the ghost of one. The memory of what a smile felt like, trying to come back. The nurse checked vitals. Blood pressure stabilizing. Heart rate coming down. Temperature still elevated but within range. She changed the dressing on his shoulder, and Micah did not flinch. He watched her with eyes that had seen people do worse things with their hands than remove bandages. "You're doing good, sweetheart," the nurse said. "You're a tough one." Micah did not respond to her. His eyes went back to Derek. Something was working behind them. Something the boy needed to say, but could not figure out how to start. "Mr. Holt." "Yeah, kid." "The SUV." Derek's body went still. Not visibly, not in a way Micah would notice, but inside every alarm he had went live. "What about it?" "It's been watching kids. Not just Sadie, for weeks." "Tell me." And Micah did, in halting, stuttered sentences that took twice as long as they should have. The boy laid out everything. The black SUV's route, diner, school, playground, church. The times, the days, the way it slowed near groups of children and accelerated near adults. The fact that it never came on weekends. The white van near the elementary school with switching plates, but the same dent on the rear bumper. The 12 minutes the SUV idled across from the church daycare on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always at 5:25, 5 minutes before pickup. Derek listened without interrupting. His face didn't move, but his hands were gripping the arms of the chair so hard the plastic groaned. Mr. Holt? Are you mad? Not at you, Micah, not at you. He stood, walked to the hallway, pulled out his phone and called Briggs. Where are you? Parking lot, coordinating with the chapters. Get up here, now. Bring Fuse. 3 minutes later, Briggs and Fuse were in the hospital room. Briggs, lean, shaved head, scar from ear to jaw, stood by the door with his arms crossed. Fuse, younger, glasses, the kind of man who could pull a phone number out of a cell tower signal the way a mechanic pulls a spark plug, sat in the chair beside the bed with a laptop balanced on his knee. Micah looked at the three men. 3 big men in leather in a small hospital room. He pulled the blanket higher. These are my guys, Derek said. They're going to listen to everything you told me. Can you tell them again? You believe me? Derek crouched beside the bed, eye level. Micah, you've been watching that SUV for weeks. You memorized routes and schedules and plate changes. Trained investigators miss that stuff. Yeah, I believe you. Now tell them everything. Micah told them again, slower this time, more detail. Fuse typed. Briggs asked questions, short, specific, no wasted words. The van near the school. You said different plates but the same dent. Which side? Rear, left side, near the tail light. How big? Like a basketball. The metal was pushed in. Color of the van? White. Dirty white, not new. You said it was there on 2 occasions. What days? Tuesday 2 weeks ago and Friday last week. Times? 3:15. Be both times. That's when the B buses leave. Briggs looked at Derek. He's not guessing. He's reporting. I know. Fuse pulled up a registration trace. The black SUV, the one from the shooting, had been traced by police to a shell corporation registered in Mobile, Alabama. A company called Grayline Holdings. Paper address. No employees. No products. Nothing but a mailbox and a tax ID. That name come up anywhere else? Derek asked. Fuse's fingers moved. Grayline Holdings owns 4 vehicles across the Southeast. The black SUV, a white Econoline van, matches the boy's description. A silver sedan registered in Atlanta, and a box truck registered in Jackson, Mississippi. Same company owns all 4? Same company, same registered agent. A man named Philip Ashford, attorney, Mobile, Alabama, clean record. But his firm has represented 3 different clients in the last 5 years who were charged with... Hold on. Fuse stopped typing, stared at his screen. Derek. What? The cops. They found something. When they traced the SUV after the shooting, they hit a storage unit connected to the registration. Inside the unit, they found a list. A list of what? Children. 14 names, ages 3 to 8, addresses, daily schedules, pickup times. Sadie's on it. Number 9. The room went silent. Not the silence of shock. The silence of something much worse. The silence of men who understood exactly what they were looking at. 14 kids, Derek said. His voice was flat, controlled, deadly. The FBI's been chasing this network for 3 years, Fuse said. They've had pieces, a van here, a phone there, a custody transfer that didn't add up. They could never connect them. They didn't have the pattern. Everybody in the room looked at Micah. The boy was sitting up in bed, wooden soldier pressed against his chest, watching them with green eyes that were 6 years old and 100 years old at the same time. He's been assembling the pattern for weeks, Briggs said quietly. An invisible kid that nobody noticed was noticing everything. Derek pulled out his phone and made a call. FBI field office in Knoxville. A man named Special Agent Torres, who had worked with the Iron Saints twice before on cases that local cops couldn't or wouldn't crack. The relationship was uneasy. Torres didn't love outlaw clubs, but he loved finding missing children. And when Derek Holt had information, it was good. Torres, it's Holt. Derek, I heard about your daughter. She okay? She's fine. I've got something you need. A witness. 6 years old. He's been tracking a vehicle network targeting children in Crestwood for weeks. Routes, times, plate rotations, secondary vehicles. He matches your data on Grayline Holdings. Silence on the line. Then, how the hell does a 6-year-old... He's been living on the street for 11 months. He sees everything. He sees things your field agents missed. You want this network or not? I'll be there in 3 hours. Torres arrived with 2 agents. Micah was frightened of them. He pressed back against the pillows, and his stutter got worse, and his hand found the wooden soldier and held on. It's okay, Derek said. These men catch bad guys. That's their job. Like police? Better than police. They won't stop. Micah studied Torres the way he studied everything. Carefully, from a distance, testing for threat. Torres was smart enough to sit in a regular chair instead of standing over the bed. He asked questions gently. He waited through the stutter. He did not once say, "Take your time." Micah gave him everything. The routes, the schedule, the church daycare at 525, the plate rotations on the white van. The second man in the SUV, shorter than the first, heavier, a limp on the left side that Micah had noticed through the passenger window because the man shifted his weight every time he stepped out to look around. The man who shot you, Torres said, did you see anything else about him? Anything before the mask? Micah closed his eyes. He was back in the parking lot, gravel under his bare feet, Sadie's hand in his, the SUV door opening. Gloves, black, but his wrist, when he reached for the gun, his sleeve pulled up. He had a tattoo on the inside of his wrist. What kind of tattoo? Numbers, blue, like a phone number, but shorter. Torres looked at his agents. Something passed between them, a recognition, a piece clicking into a larger picture. Micah, you might have just identified a marking system we've been tracking across 4 states. Micah didn't know what that meant. He just held the soldier tighter. Over the next 48 hours, the Iron Saints intelligence network worked in parallel with the FBI. Not together, that line was never crossed, not officially, but in parallel, sharing a wall, trading information through Derek like current through a wire. Fuse intercepted cell phone signals in a 12-mile radius around Crestwood and cross-referenced them with known numbers associated with Grayline Holdings. He found 3 burner phones pinging from the same location, an abandoned chicken processing plant off County Road 9, 12 miles outside of town. The phones were active between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Calls going to mobile, calls going to Atlanta, calls going to a number in Mexico that Torres's team had been trying to trace for 18 months. Briggs ran field reconnaissance. He sent men, quiet men who knew how to move through rural Tennessee at night without being seen, to the plant. They came back with a count, 4 vehicles inside the perimeter. At least 6 adults moving between the building and the vehicles between midnight and 2 a.m. And something else, smaller phones, cheap prepaid devices, the kind you give to a child to keep them quiet with games while they wait. While they waited for what? Nobody wanted to say. How many kids? Derek asked Briggs. It was 2 in the morning. They were in the hospital cafeteria, cold coffee, no one eating. We don't know. Fuse picked up at least 3 small device signals. Could be more. Could be more. Derek set his coffee down. His hand was steady, but the cup trembled when it touched the table. There are children in that building right now. Yes. Right now, tonight, while we're sitting here. Derek, Call Torres. Tell him we have a location. Tell him we'll hold the perimeter. His team breaches. But this happens tonight, not tomorrow, not after more surveillance. Tonight. Briggs made the call. Torres pushed back. Too fast. Not enough preparation. Risk to hostages. Derek took the phone. Torres, there are children in that building. Every hour we wait is an hour they don't get back. Your team takes the breach. My men take the perimeter. Every door, every window, every hole in the fence. Nothing gets out. If this goes wrong, then it goes wrong while we're trying. I can live with that. Can you live with knowing they were there and we waited? Torres couldn't. No one could. Full mobilization. Derek stood in the hospital parking lot at 10 p.m. and looked at 670 men and spoke in a voice that carried without shouting. There's a building 12 miles east. There are children inside. FBI handles the breach. We are the wall. Nothing gets out. Nothing. Not a man, not a car, not a shadow. You see someone running, you stop them. You see someone carrying a child, you stop them and you do not let go. This is what we ride for. This is what the patch means. No one spoke. No one needed to. 670 engines started. The sound shook the ground. They moved in columns. Dark highway. No sirens. Just the thunder of 670 motorcycles running east through the Tennessee night in a formation that stretched for miles. Cars pulled over. People stood on their porches and watched, and did not understand what they were seeing, but understood that something massive was moving, and that it was moving with purpose. The plant was dark. Chain-link fence. Rusted gates. FBI SWAT positioned on the north side. Iron chains spread around the perimeter like a living fence. Every exit, every gap, every shadow covered by men who had been told nothing gets out and who took those words as gospel. Midnight. Torres gave the signal. Flashbangs, 3 in rapid succession. The night went white. SWAT breached the north entrance. Doors caving in. Boots on concrete. Shouting. Controlled. Trained. Terrifying. FBI, on the ground now. Gunfire, 3 shots from inside. Return fire, then silence. The kind of silence that means it's over, or it's about to get worse. Clear, first floor, clear. Moving to second floor. Boots on stairs, more shouting, more doors. Then a voice, a different voice, younger, shaking, came over the radio. We have children. Second floor, 6, no 8. We have 8 children. They're alive, Jesus, they're zip-tied to cots. Medics, now. Derek was on his bike 50 yards from the east exit. He heard it through Fuse's radio. 8 children, zip-tied to cots. His jaw locked so hard he felt something crack in his tooth. Then the east exit blew open. 2 men, running. One of them had a child under his arm. A girl, small, maybe 5, limp, not moving. The other was sprinting for a gap in the fence. Derek's headlight hit them. Briggs came from the left. 2 bikes, 2 men. The runners skidded to a stop. The one carrying the child, later identified as Vincent Pryor, the same man who had shot Micah 3 days earlier, looked at Derek, recognized what he was seeing. 600 pounds of motorcycle, and a man with a face that promised the absolute worst thing imaginable. Back off. Pryor's voice was high, panicked. I'll hurt her. I swear to God I'll hurt her. Derek killed the engine, swung his leg over, walked toward Pryor. Slow, steady, every step deliberate. You shot a 6-year-old boy 3 days ago. You put a bullet in a child who weighed 50 pounds and didn't have a weapon and didn't back down. And now you're holding a little girl like a shield. Derek stopped, 10 feet away. Put her down. I said back off. You want to know what's behind me? Derek's voice was calm. So calm it was worse than screaming. 670 men. Every one of them left their families tonight to be here. Every one of them knows what you did to that boy. Every one of them knows there are children zip-tied to cots in that building. You can hear them, can't you? Pryor could hear them. The rumble. 670 engines idling in the darkness like the breathing of something enormous and patient and angry beyond anything he had ever imagined. You have about 10 seconds to put that little girl on the ground before every one of those men decides that the FBI can arrest what's left of you. Pryor's hands were shaking. The child was still limp under his arm. He looked left, Briggs blocking the gap. He looked right, more bikes, more headlights, more men. He looked behind, SWAT pouring out of the building. He put the child down. She fell, just dropped. Her legs didn't hold. Derek was on his knees in a second, catching her, pulling her close. She was breathing, shallow, drugged, but breathing. He held her against his chest and looked up at Pryor, and the look on his face made Pryor take a step back. FBI agents took Pryor to the ground, cuffed him, dragged him up. He was bleeding from the nose. Whether that happened during the tackle or before, nobody asked and nobody cared. That same night, coordinated raids hit 4 states. A house in Atlanta, an office in Mobile, a warehouse in Jackson, a motel room in Charlotte. 11 more arrests. 23 children recovered total, ages 3 to 8. Some had been missing for weeks, some for days. One boy had been taken that afternoon. Torres called Derek at 3 in the morning. 23 kids, all alive. We've got Ashford in Mobile. The attorney, the one running the money, he's talking. They're all talking. The network is done. How? How what? How did they have 23 children and nobody found them? Torres didn't answer for a long time. Because nobody was looking in the right places. Nobody except a 6-year-old kid who lived behind a dumpster. Derek rode back to the hospital, 3 a.m. His body was running on nothing. No food, no sleep, no rest in 3 days. He walked down the hallway, pushed open the door to room 312. Micah was awake, sitting up in bed, wooden soldier in both hands pressed against his chest, staring at the door like he had been staring at it for hours. The boy looked at Derek. Derek looked at the boy, and something passed between them that neither of them could name. Not gratitude, not obligation, not pity, not debt. Something bigger. Something that had to do with a man who kept his word and a boy who had never had anyone keep their word before. You came back. I told you I would. People always say that. I'm not people. Micah studied him, hard. The way he studied everything, testing it, weighing it, checking it against 11 months of proof that adults lied and kindness was temporary, and anyone who said, "I'll be right back," was probably gone for good. He looked at Derek's boots, dusty, dirty, road-worn. He looked at his hands, scraped, exhausted, the hands of a man who had done something tonight and come straight here instead of going home. Where did you go? We found them, Micah. Found who? The people in the SUV, and the people they work for, and the children they took. Micah's breath caught. His fingers tightened on the soldier. How many kids? 23. Alive. All of them alive. Because of the stuff I told you, the routes and the times, because of you, every bit of it. You watched when nobody else watched. You remembered when nobody else paid attention. You told us what you saw, and it unraveled the whole thing. 23 children are going home because a kid who lives behind a dumpster cared enough to count. Micah pressed the wooden soldier against his chest so hard his knuckles went white. His face crumpled. Not crying, something deeper than crying. The kind of release that happens when a body that has been holding itself together through sheer willpower for 11 months finally gets permission to break. Derek moved to the bed. He put his hand on the boy's head, gently, the way he touched Sadie's head when she had nightmares, the way his own father had never touched him. You did good, kid. You did so good. Micah leaned into the hand. A small, involuntary movement. The movement of a child who had forgotten what safe felt like and was remembering it one nerve at a time. He pressed his face against Derek's arm and shook and did not make a sound because 11 months on the street had taught him that crying out loud was dangerous. But he could not hold this in, could not keep it down, could not be invisible anymore. Derek held him, did not move, did not speak, just held a broken boy in a hospital room at 3 a.m, while 670 motorcycles idled in the parking lot below, and 23 children were on their way home, and the wooden soldier that Rachel Ward had carved with a pocket knife and a mother's love stood guard on the pillow where Sadie had placed it, watching over both of them in the dark. Micah came home on a Tuesday. Not home. He had never had that word mean anything real. He came to the Holtz house, which was different, which was a building with rooms and a roof, and people inside who said he could stay. Derek carried him from the truck because the boy's legs were shaky, and his shoulder was wrapped tight, and the painkillers made the world tilt sideways when he walked. Micah did not fight being carried. He was too tired to fight, too tired to do anything except let a man he had known for 6 days lift him like he weighed nothing, and walk through a front door into a life Micah did not believe was real. Sadie had prepared. That was the only word for it. She had spent 2 days turning the spare bedroom into something that looked like a craft store had exploded inside a toy store. Drawings on every wall, taped, pinned, stuck with Band-Aids where the tape ran out, a stuffed rabbit on the pillow, a blanket folded at the foot of the bed with a note safety pinned to it that said, "This is Micah's blanket. Nobody touch it. Sadie." "This is your room," Sadie announced, standing in the doorway with her hands on her hips like a real estate agent closing a deal. "General Buttons is on the pillow because he's the best at guarding. The drawings are all pictures of us. That one is us eating grilled cheese. That one is us sorting bottle caps. That one is you fighting the bad guys, and you're winning." Micah looked at the room. His face did nothing. His eyes did everything. They moved across the walls, the bed, the pillow, the blanket. They moved the way they always moved, cataloging, measuring, looking for the trap. "I can stay here?" "It's your room, dummy. That's what your room means." "For how long?" Sadie looked at him like he had asked if the sky was blue. "For always, Micah. Obviously." He sat on the bed, touched the blanket, pulled it into his lap and held it, and did not cry because he had trained himself not to cry, but his chin was shaking, and his hands were gripping the fabric so hard his knuckles were white. Karen stood in the hallway. She had been watching. She pressed her hand over her mouth and turned away because she could not let him see her face right now. Derek put his arm around her. Neither of them spoke. Some things don't fit in words. Some things just have to be survived. The first night, Micah did not sleep in the bed. Derek found him at 2 a.m. on the floor beside the dresser, curled into the smallest shape a human body can make, the wooden soldier clutched against his chest. Derek picked him up, put him back in bed, pulled the blanket over him. Micah's eyes opened. You don't have to do that." "I know. I can sleep on the floor. I don't mind." "I mind. You've got a bed now. Use it." What if I fall out?" "Then I'll pick you up again." Micah looked at him for a long time, testing, always testing. What if I have a nightmare and I scream?" Derek sat on the edge of the bed. "Then I'll come in, and I'll sit right here, and I'll stay until it passes." Glenn used to." The boy stopped, his jaw locked. The stutter wasn't blocking the words this time. The memory was. "Glenn's gone, Micah. Glenn is never touching you again. Nobody in this house will ever hit you. Not me, not Karen, not Sadie. Well, Sadie might hit you with a pillow, but that doesn't count." Something broke through Micah's face. Tiny, fast, the ghost of that almost smile. Get some sleep, Mr. Holt." "You first, kid." The first days were hard in ways nobody expected. Micah ate real food and got sick. His stomach, conditioned by 11 months of garbage can meals and dumpster scraps, rejected a full plate of Karen's pasta within 20 minutes. He threw up in the kitchen and immediately dropped to his knees and started cleaning it with his bare hands, apologizing so fast his stutter turned the words into a collision. "I'm sorry, I'll clean it. Please don't." Karen was on her knees beside him in a second. She took his hands, held them still, looked him in the eyes. "Micah, stop. Look at me." He looked. His whole body was shaking. Braced for the hit, braced for the yelling, braced for the thing that always came when you made a mess in someone else's house. "You got sick because your body isn't used to real food yet. That's not your fault. We're going to start smaller. 3 pancakes tomorrow. No rush. The food isn't going anywhere, and neither are we." He stared at her, searching her face for the crack, the tell, the moment when the kindness would flip into something else. He didn't find it. You're not mad?" "Honey, I've cleaned up Sadie's messes for 4 years. You think a little pasta scares me?" He didn't know what to do with that. He just knelt there on the kitchen floor with clean hands and a dirty shirt and let Karen wipe his face with a warm cloth and did not flinch when she touched his cheek. That was the victory, the not flinching. It was the size of the world. He didn't know how to use a shower. Sadie taught him. She stood outside the bathroom door and yelled instructions like a drill sergeant. "Turn the left one for hot. Not that much. A little. Do you feel that? Is it warm? Good. Now use the soap. The soap, Micah. The white thing. Rub it on your... Yes. Good. Now your hair. There's shampoo. The blue bottle. Squeeze it. In your hand. Now your head." "I know how to wash my head, Sadie." "You clearly don't because your hair looks like a bird lives in it." He laughed. Quiet. Quick. Just a breath of it through the bathroom door. But Karen heard it from the hallway and had to sit down because it was the first time she had ever heard that sound come from him, and it destroyed her. He didn't know how to sit at a table with people. He ate standing up, fast, hunched over his plate with one arm curved around it like someone was going to take it. Derek noticed on the second day. He didn't say anything. He just pulled out a chair, sat down, and waited. Micah watched him. Derek waited. Eventually, Micah sat. He ate with one hand. The other stayed in his lap, curled around the wooden soldier. Nobody's going to take my food?" "Nobody's going to take your food. At Brenda's, if you didn't eat fast, the other K kids took it. There are no other kids here, just you and Sadie. And Sadie steals fries, but she's honest about it." "I do steal fries," Sadie confirmed from across the table. "But only if they're really good." Micah looked at his plate, looked at Derek, looked at Karen, looked at Sadie, who was already reaching toward his fries with a grin that could light a highway. He pushed the plate toward her. You can have some." Sadie's grin vanished. Her eyes went wide, then wet. She pulled her hand back. "No, those are yours. I was kidding. Eat your food, Micah." "I want to share." "You don't have to share with me." "I want to." Sadie took one fry. She ate it slowly, like it was the most important fry in the history of fries. Then she looked at her mother, and her face said everything her mouth didn't. This boy has never had enough to give away, and he's giving away the first thing he has. The nightmares came every night, screaming, thrashing, falling out of bed. Sometimes he woke up on the floor, pressed against the wall, eyes open but seeing nothing, seeing Glenn, seeing the parking lot, seeing the gun. Derek came in every single time. He picked Micah up, put him back in bed, sat on the edge, stayed until the breathing slowed. One night, 4 days in, Micah woke screaming and grabbed Derek's arm and held on so hard his nails left marks. He was shaking, soaked in sweat. His eyes were wild. He's coming. He's coming back." "Who, Glenn?" The man with the gun, he's coming to finish it. Derek took the boy's face in both hands. Micah, look at me. Look at my eyes. Green eyes found brown eyes. That man is in jail. He's in a cell with a locked door and armed guards, and he's never coming out. And even if he did, even if every wall in that prison fell down, he'd have to come through me. And 670 men behind me, and a 4-year-old girl with very good aim. Micah's breathing slowed. 1 notch. 2. His grip loosened. He didn't let go. You'll stay? I'll stay. Promise? I promise. Derek stayed. The whole night. Sitting on the edge of a child's bed, one hand on the boy's bed, staring at the wall, thinking about wooden soldiers and bullet wounds, and a system that let a boy fall through the cracks so many times he forgot there was ground beneath him. Then, on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after Micah came home, the knock came. Karen answered the door. A couple. Well-dressed. The man was mid-50s, silver hair, pressed shirt, expensive watch. The woman was younger, dark hair, kind eyes, hands clasped in front of her like she was praying or bracing herself. Can I help you? Mrs. Holt, my name is Richard Ellison. This is my wife, Grace. I'm Rachel Ward's brother, Micah's uncle. Karen's blood went cold. We've been looking for Micah since Rachel died. The foster system lost his records, sent them to the wrong county, then the wrong state. We hired private investigators, dead ends for 2 years. Then Micah's name appeared in the news report about the shooting. Karen stood in the doorway. She did not step aside. She did not invite them in. We'd like to see him, Grace said. Her voice was gentle. Her eyes were wet. Please, we've been searching for 2 years. He's the only family Rachel left. Karen called Derek. Derek came to the door. He looked at Richard Ellison the way he looked at everything, directly, completely, without pretense. You're Rachel's brother. Yes. Where were you? The question hit Richard like a fist. His face changed. The polished exterior cracked, and underneath it was grief. Real, raw, ugly grief. Looking. We were looking. Every day for 2 years. The system, they told us Micah was placed in a stable home. They told us he was safe. We had no reason to. He stopped, took a breath. We should have pushed harder. I know that. I wake up knowing that. Derek looked at Grace. Grace was crying silently. Her hands were shaking. He's been beaten, Derek said, flat, no cushion. Burned with cigarettes, hit with a phone cord, starved. He lived behind a dumpster for 11 months. He took a bullet protecting my daughter. He's 6 years old and he weighs 43 pounds. Richard's face drained of color. Grace made a sound, a small, broken sound, and pressed her hand against her mouth. You want to see him. I understand that. But I need you to understand something first. That boy in there has been let down by every adult in his life. Every single one. If you walk through this door and you look at him and you give him hope, and then you take it away, I will consider that a personal matter. Are we clear? Richard held Derek's eyes. We're not here to take anything. We're here because Rachel was my sister and Micah is her son, and we failed him and we need to make it right. Derek stepped aside. Micah was in the living room with Sadie. They were on the floor, bottle caps spread between them, red on the left, silver on the right, gold in the middle. He looked up and saw the strangers, and his whole body went tight. His hand found the wooden soldier in his pocket. His eyes went to Derek. It's okay, Derek said. These people want to talk to you. Richard knelt, slowly, the way Derek had learned to move around Micah. No sudden motions, no looming, everything at eye level. Micah, my name is Richard. I'm your mama's brother. Micah's face didn't change. His eyes did. Something flickered, something deep and buried. My mom didn't have a brother. She did. She had me. We lost touch when she moved to Tennessee. I tried to find her when she got sick, but by the time I got to the hospital, Richard's voice broke. He pressed his fist against his mouth, took a breath, started again. By the time I got there, she was gone, and you were gone. The system said you were placed. They wouldn't tell me where. They said you were safe. I wasn't safe. I know that now. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Micah. Micah looked at Richard, then at Grace, then at Derek, then at Sadie, who was standing now, positioned between Micah and the strangers, with her arms crossed and her chin up, a 4-year-old wall. He lives here, Sadie said. You can't take him. Grace knelt beside Richard. Sweetheart, we're not here to... He's my brother. I don't care if you're his uncle. I don't care if you're the president. He lives here. Sadie, Derek's voice, firm, gentle. Let them talk. The Ellisons didn't push. They stayed for an hour. They showed Micah photographs of Rachel as a girl, gap-toothed, grinning, holding a fishing rod twice her size. Micah touched the photographs with one finger like they might dissolve. He didn't speak. His stutter locked everything down. But his eyes ate those photographs alive. After they left, Micah went to his room and didn't come out for the rest of the day. When Derek knocked at bedtime, the boy was sitting on the floor against the wall, holding the wooden soldier, staring at nothing. You're going to send me away? No. They're family, real family. The judge will make me go. Nobody's making you go anywhere. You don't know that. The system always... Micah, Derek sat on the floor across from him. I'm going to fight for you. Karen's going to fight for you. And Sadie would fight God Almighty if he tried to move you out of this house. But I need you to hear me on something. If those people are who they say they are, if they're your mama's blood, then that matters. Not more than what we are, but it matters. You understand? What if the judge says I have to go? Then we fight that too. Well, what if you lose? Derek looked at the boy. I don't lose when it comes to family. It went to court. Judge Robert Callahan, 25 years on the bench, a man who had seen every custody case this state could produce and still believed the system worked more often than it failed, which was either faith or delusion, depending on who you asked. The Ellisons brought lawyers, financial records, character witnesses, a house in Vermont with 4 bedrooms and a yard that backed up to a river, top schools, stability, and the law. Biological family takes precedence. The Holtz brought Catherine Mercer, the sharpest family attorney in Tennessee, red hair, no-nonsense voice, a reputation for cross-examinations that left opposing counsel reaching for water, and they brought the truth. Sadie testified first. Her feet didn't touch the floor from the witness chair. She swung them while she talked, back and forth, and nobody told her to stop because nobody in that courtroom had the heart. He got shot for me. He pushed me behind the propane tank, and the man shot him, and there was blood everywhere. So much blood, and he still didn't let go of my hand. That's what family does. Family doesn't let go. Sadie, Catherine Mercer said gently, can you tell the judge what Micah means to you? He's my brother. I know we don't look the same, and I know we don't have the same mommy, but he's my brother, and I don't care what anybody says. He sorts bottle caps with me, and he gave me his soldier, the one his mama made, and he's the bravest person I ever met. She looked at Judge Callahan, dead in the eyes, 4 years old and absolutely certain. Please don't make me break my promise. I told him I'd never let go. The courtroom was silent. The court reporter stopped typing. The bailiff, a man who had worked this courtroom for 15 years, was staring at the ceiling because if he looked at that little girl for one more second, he was going to lose it. Micah testified next. His stutter was brutal. Every word was a war. The court reporter struggled to keep up, but Micah fought through every syllable the way he had fought through everything else. Head down, fists clenched, refusing to stop. My mom made wooden soldiers. She said they guard you at night. She made 47. Then she died. He told them about the Marshalls, about Brenda, about Glenn, the belt, the phone cord, the freezing night he ran away at 5 years old, barefoot, clutching the last soldier. I lived behind a dumpster for 11 months. I ate out of the garbage. I slept in the rain. I talked to nobody because nobody wanted to talk to me. Then he turned to the Ellisons. Richard and Grace, sitting at their table, hands clasped, faces wrecked. "Where were you?" Micah asked. Quiet. Not angry. Worse than angry. Honest. When Glenn was hitting me, when I was sleeping in the rain, when I was so hungry I ate food off the ground, when I wanted to die. Grace broke. A sob that she tried to hold in and couldn't. Richard put his arm around her, and his own face was the face of a man watching the full weight of his failure land on a 6-year-old boy's shoulders. "I'm not saying you're bad people. Maybe you looked, maybe you tried, but they found me." Micah pointed at Derek and Karen. "They weren't looking for me. They didn't have to care, but they did. He sat in a chair for 3 days and watched me breathe. She held my head when I got sick from eating too much. She didn't yell. She said the food would still be there tomorrow." His voice dropped to a whisper. The courtroom leaned forward. "Please let me stay. This is the first time I've ever felt like I was home," Judge Callahan ruled. His voice was steady, but his eyes were not. "This child has been through more in 6 years than most endure in a lifetime. He has been failed by every institution designed to protect him. He has not been failed by the Holts. The court grants permanent custody to Derek and Karen Holt. The Ellisons will receive visitation rights to be arranged at Micah's pace and comfort." He looked at Micah. "You've earned the right to choose, son, and you've made your choice." Outside the courthouse, Richard approached Derek. There was no anger in his face, just grief and gratitude tangled together in a knot that would probably never come undone. "Rachel would have been thankful," Richard said, "for what you've done." Derek shook his hand, held it. "Come for Christmas. You're still his blood. That matters." Richard nodded. Grace hugged Micah. Not the hug of someone claiming ownership, but the hug of someone saying hello for the first time and hoping it wouldn't be the last. 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. Same courtroom, same judge. Micah sat between Derek and Karen. Sadie was vibrating so hard the entire bench shook. Judge Callahan signed the papers, looked up, almost smiled. "Congratulations, young man. You officially have a family." Sadie exploded off the bench. "Your name is Holt now. Say it." Micah Holt. "Louder. Micah Holt. Louder, Micah." He laughed. An actual laugh. Not the ghost of one. Not the memory of one. A real, full, open laugh that came from his gut and shook his shoulders and filled the courtroom and made every person in it stop what they were doing and stare. Because that sound, the sound of a boy who had been beaten and starved and shot and forgotten, laughing like the world was beautiful, was the most hopeful thing any of them had ever heard. Karen was crying. Derek was failing to not cry and not caring who saw. Sadie was jumping up and down. The bailiff was wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Even Judge Callahan, 25 years on the bench, was blinking faster than usual. That night at dinner, the 4 of them, at the table, like a family, Micah put down his fork and said something that stopped every sound in the room. "I used to think invisible was the safest thing to be. Then Sadie saw me behind a dumpster and asked about my bottle caps. That was the scariest thing that ever happened to me, because being seen meant someone could hurt me." He paused, swallowed. "But it also meant someone could love me." 4 hands stacked together in the center of the table. Derek's on the bottom, Karen's on his, Micah's on hers. Sadie's on top, pressing down with all her weight like she could hold them all together by force. A family built not from blood, but from a bullet, from bottle caps in a tin can, from a little girl who threw a rock at a grown man and held a bleeding boy's hand on a parking lot pavement and told a judge what family means. The years move the way years do when a life finally has ground beneath it, slow enough to feel, fast enough to steal. Micah grew, not all at once, not in the easy, straight-line way that kids with normal childhoods grow. He grew in jolts and setbacks and hard-won inches. The scar on his shoulder faded from angry red to pink to a thin white crescent that he could trace with his finger in the dark when the nightmares came. The nightmares faded too. Not completely, they never did. But from every night to most nights to some nights to the occasional bad one that sent him to the kitchen at 2 a.m. where Derek would already be sitting with 2 glasses of milk, because somehow Derek always knew. But bad one? Micah would ask. Couldn't sleep. You? Same. They never called them nightmares. They called them bad ones. And they drank milk and sat in the quiet, and that was enough. Sometimes enough is everything. The stutter loosened its grip year by year. Speech therapy twice a week with a woman named Dr. Paulson, who never once told him to slow down or take his time or breathe. She told him to fight through it, to treat every stuck word like a door that was jammed, not locked. You're not broken, Micah. Your mouth just hasn't caught up with your brain yet. Push. He pushed. By 8, the stutter came and went. By 10, it only surfaced when he was tired or scared or feeling something too big for words. He wore it without shame. It was part of him the way the scar was part of him, proof that he had survived something and come out the other side, still standing. At 7, he went back to school. Karen held his hand to the front door on the first day, and Micah stopped walking and looked at the building, and his face went blank in that way it did when the fear was too big to show. What if they don't like me? Then they're wrong. What if they make fun of the stutter? Then you look them in the eye and keep talking. Your words matter, Micah. Every single one. Even the ones that take a little longer to get out. He walked in. He did not look back. Karen stood on the sidewalk until the door closed, and then she sat in the car for 15 minutes and cried so hard her ribs hurt because that boy who had eaten out of garbage cans and slept in the rain and been beaten by men who were supposed to protect him, had just walked into a school with his chin up and his shoulders back and the wooden soldier in his pocket, and he had not looked back. Sadie appointed herself his personal bodyguard. She was in a different class, but she found him at every recess, every lunch, every transition between periods. When a boy in 3rd grade mocked Micah's stutter, Sadie walked up to the boy and said, "He got shot protecting someone. What have you ever done?" The boy did not mock Micah again. At 10, Micah asked Derek to take him to the homeless shelter on 5th Street. What for? I want to help. You're 10, kid. I know what it's like to be hungry and invisible. I know where to look. I know what to say. Derek drove him. Every Saturday, they rode in comfortable silence, not the silence of strangers, the silence of 2 people who had said everything that mattered and could now share space without filling it. Micah sorted cans, served meals, sat with people who smelled like the street and talked to them like they were human because he knew what it felt like when people didn't. A woman at the shelter, 60s, missing teeth, hands that shook, looked at Micah one Saturday and said, "You've been out here, haven't you, baby? You know what the cold feels like." Yes, ma'am." "How'd you get out?" Someone saw me." That's all it takes? That's everything it takes. At 12, Micah sat Derek down at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning and said something that changed the trajectory of everything that followed. "I want to build something." "What kind of something?" "A place for kids like me, kids on the streets, kids in the system who fell through. A place where someone sees them, where they don't have to be invisible to be safe. Derek looked at his son, 12 years old, thin white scar on his shoulder, green eyes that still checked exits in every room, but now also checked for people who needed help. A boy who had been shot at 6, adopted at 6, and was sitting here at 12 with a plan to save other children because nobody had saved him in time, and he refused to let that be the end of the story. What do you want to call it? Micah reached into his pocket, pulled out the wooden soldier, set it on the table between them, worn smooth by years of a boy's hands. The face was nearly gone. The base was rounded from being clutched and carried and pressed against a chest 10,000 nights in a row. Soldier's Watch. Derek picked up the soldier, turned it in his hands, felt the weight of it, not physical weight, but the other kind. The weight of a dying woman carving 47 of these for a boy who would only keep one. The weight of that one making it through 3 foster homes and 11 months on the street and a bullet wound in a courtroom and 10 years of nightmares. Then we build it. The Iron Saints donated, not because Derek asked, he didn't have to ask. The word went out through the chapters the way every word went out. Fast, complete, non-negotiable. Holt's boy wants to build a shelter. Money flowed in from 9 states. Men who had never met Micah sent checks with notes scrawled on the memo line. For the kid who stood up, and Soldier's Watch, and whatever he needs. Karen organized fundraisers. She was a force. The same woman who had grabbed a baseball bat and run into a parking lot to save her daughter now ran bake sales and benefit dinners and grant applications with the same ferocity. She raised $40,000 in 3 months. When someone told her that wasn't enough, she raised $40,000 more. Sadie went door to door with a clipboard and a pitch so relentless that people in Crestwood started donating just to make her stop coming back. She was 14. She had her mother's stubbornness and her father's intensity and a smile that made it physically impossible to say no. Hi, I'm Sadie Holt. My brother Micah is building a shelter for homeless kids. Would you like to contribute? Sweetheart, any amount helps. $5 feeds a child for a day. $10 provides. I gave last week. That was last week. This is this week. Kids are still hungry. Soldier's Watch opened when Micah was 14. A building on the east side of Crestwood that used to be a hardware store. Hot meals, beds, counselors, a room with books and games and a couch where you could sit without anyone asking why you were there or where you came from or when you were leaving. Micah ran the youth outreach himself. After school, weekends, summers, he walked the alleys, the parking lots, the spaces behind dumpsters and under bridges, and in the gaps between buildings where a small body could hide from the rain. He knew where to look because he had slept in those spots. He knew what to say because he remembered what he had needed to hear. He never started with, "Are you okay?" because the answer was always no, and the question made kids bolt. He started with whatever they were doing. If they were sorting rocks, he asked about the rocks. If they were counting cars, he counted with them. He met them where they were. He let them decide when to trust. On opening day, the first kid who walked through the door was a 7-year-old boy named Caleb. Dirty clothes, no shoes, matted hair, eyes that moved the way Micah's eyes had moved at that age, fast, scanning, cataloging threats. He was sitting outside the shelter sorting pebbles into a rusty can, small ones on the left, medium on the right, smooth ones in the middle. Micah's heart cracked open. The years collapsed. He was standing in that same light, looking at that same invisible kid, and every single thing he had survived, Rachel's cold hand, Glenn's fists, the gravel in his palms, the bullet, the blood, the chair Derek sat in for 3 days. Every single thing converged into this moment, this one moment, this kid with a rusty can. He knelt down, not too close, not too fast, at eye level. The way Derek had knelt beside his hospital bed 8 years ago. The way you approach something wounded, with patience, with respect, with the understanding that trust is earned in inches and lost in seconds. Those are some good pebbles. Caleb looked up, suspicious, ready to run. The smooth ones are the hardest to find, Micah said. I used to collect bottle caps, red, silver, and gold. The gold ones were rare. Something shifted in Caleb's face, tiny, a hairline crack in the wall. I like the white ones, Caleb said. They're almost clear, like glass but not. Quartz, Micah said. Those are quartz. Is that good? That's really good. Quartz is tough. It doesn't break easy. Caleb looked at his collection, then at Micah. Testing. The way Micah had tested Derek. The way every kid who had been hurt by the world tested every new person who entered it. Micah reached into his pocket, pulled out the wooden soldier, the last one his mother carved, worn so smooth it looked almost like a river stone now. He held it out. What is this? Caleb asked. A soldier. My mom made it. He guards you at night. Nothing bad gets through while he's watching. Caleb took it, held it, turned it in his small, dirty hands the way Sadie had turned it all those years ago behind a dumpster. What's your name? Caleb asked. Micah Holt. What's yours? Caleb. Nice to meet you, Caleb. You hungry? Starving. Come on, the cook here makes the best grilled cheese in Tennessee. He held out his hand. Caleb looked at it for a long time. A long time. The way a kid looks at something he wants to believe in, but has been burned too many times to reach for without checking first. Then he took it, small hand in a bigger hand, the same way Micah's hand had fit inside Derek's, the cycle turning, the light passing forward. That night, Micah sat on the porch with Sadie. Stars overhead, a motorcycle rumbling somewhere on the highway, fading into the distance the way motorcycles do, present, then gone, then just a memory of sound. You okay? Sadie asked. Just thinking. About what? About how one person can change everything. He looked at her. 18 years old, still had the gap between her front teeth, still had the same stubbornness, the same certainty, the same inability to leave anything or anyone behind. You changed everything, Sadie. That day behind the dumpster, you didn't know what you were doing, you were 4, but you looked at me and you saw something worth saving. You saved me first. I guess we're even, she laughed. That Sadie laugh, loud, immediate, the kind that came from the center of her chest and didn't care who heard it. We're not even. We're family. Family doesn't keep score. Micah pulled something from his jacket pocket, a wooden soldier, not his mother's, that one he had given to Caleb. This one was new, rough, imperfect. The face was crooked and the base was uneven, and you could see the knife marks where the blade had slipped. He had carved it himself. His first one, made with his own hands the way his mother had taught him, without knowing she was teaching him. When did you make that? Sadie asked. Last week. I'm going to give it to Caleb when the time is right. It looks like Mom's. He didn't call Rachel Mom very often. When he did, it meant something was moving inside him that went all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to a windowsill lined with 47 soldiers and a voice saying, nothing bad gets through. I want every kid who comes through Soldier's Watch to have one, Micah said. I want to carve them the way she carved them. One at a time, by hand, so every kid knows somebody spent time on them. Somebody sat down and made something just for them. Sadie didn't say anything. She leaned her head against his shoulder, the one with the scar, and they sat there on the porch while the stars did what stars do, which is burn in silence and not care who's watching. The next morning, 670 motorcycles rode through Crestwood, the annual ride. Every year, on the anniversary of the night a 6-year-old boy took a bullet for a biker's daughter, the Iron Saints gathered. Every chapter, every state, They came from garages and kitchens and night shifts and farms. They came because the ride was sacred now. It was tradition. It was the thing that reminded them why they wore the patch. Micah rode at the front beside Derek. 18 years old, tall now, lean, the scar visible at the collar of his shirt. His hands steady on the handlebars. Behind them, 670 engines shook the earth. The town lined the streets. People waved. Kids sat on their father's shoulders and pointed. Somewhere in the crowd, Karen stood with Grace Ellison, who came to Crestwood every year now, who had become family in her own quiet way, who brought photographs of Rachel every visit and let Micah hold them as long as he needed. In the parking lot of Soldier's Watch, Caleb stood watching the ride with wide eyes and the wooden soldier clutched in both hands. Micah saw him, raised a hand. Caleb raised one back, tentative, small, the hand of a boy who was learning that the world contained both darkness and this, both Glenn and Derek, both bullets and wooden soldiers, both the cruelty that breaks a child and the love that puts him back together. In Micah's pocket, pressed against his heart, was the soldier he had carved himself, rough and imperfect, ready to be given when the time was right. Because that was the work now. Not healing himself. He would be healing himself for the rest of his life. The work was passing it forward. The light, the warmth, the terrifying act of being seen. Micah Holt had been invisible once. Starving. Shot. Broken. Forgotten. He had slept behind a dumpster and eaten from garbage cans, and held a dead woman's hand at 4 years old, and run barefoot through a freezing night at 5, with a wooden soldier pressed against his heart because it was the only thing in the world that was his. And he had risen, not alone, never alone, with 670 riders at his back, a father who stayed, a mother who held him, and a little girl who looked behind a dumpster and saw something the whole world had missed. Finding someone means stumbling on them by accident. Seeing someone means choosing to look. Sadie Holt chose to look at a dirty, stuttering boy sorting bottle caps in the dirt, and she saw someone worth fighting for. That choice did not just change his life, it changed every life he touched after. Every child who walked through the doors of Soldier's Watch. Every kid who held a wooden soldier and heard the words, "Nothing bad gets through." One person can change everything, but only if they choose to look.